Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agrii. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. Today, we will be discussing phosphorus as a key nutrient across a variety of crops, from cereals to potatoes to veg, reviewing recent research and its impact on financial margins, and how farmers and growers can get involved in finding out more. And we are joined by Agrii's Tom Land, Fertiliser Technical Manager, and Don Pendergrast, Technical Manager for Specialty Crops. So, good morning to you both.
Morning, Tony.
Morning.
Good morning. And let's start off by actually understanding, well, what is the technical value, the importance of phosphorus when we're talking about these different crops. Tom, maybe you can start us off. Let's think about cereals first of all. Just remind us of the value of this specific nutrient.
Well, phosphorus is incredibly important for all crops, really, and we tend to measure it in a soil test, so we understand and measure how much P is in our soils. But what we do know is its importance in terms of helping with establishment, helping the plant to build a root system, but also helping with certain energy functions where the plant can actually perform better and also help its ability to grow quicker and also produce better fertility as well. So it has a multitude of functions within the plant, but sometimes it's quite easy to make an economic decision and say, right, I'm not applying any P.
Yeah. And Don, from your point of view, let's think about those specialty crops that you look at. What's the value in those crops?
Okay, so I mean, Tom's absolutely right, and in some ways the value is the same, which is particularly around establishment, rooting, and throughout the process. I think if you think about those specialty crops, a lot of them are root-based crops. So think about something like potatoes, tuber initiation. And the actual development of the tuber is critically influenced by the amount of phosphorus that's available in terms of getting optimal numbers of tubers, and then actually the sort of transport and storage of starch within those tubers is affected by the availability of phosphorus. And similarly, when we think about veg crops, it's very much rooting and establishment and the development of the storage organs is affected by the availability of phosphorus.
Tom, when it comes to cereals, here's the question. Are farmers focusing enough on getting it right in terms of the ensuring there is enough phosphorus in that crop or for that crop?
I think certainly if we look at trends of P use over a long period of time, we can see that the overall P usage has declined, and for some reasons that is a good reason to see P usage declining, because it means farmers are maybe adopting new technologies. They're maybe getting as much as they can out of the P that they're applying. But certainly what we're seeing is trends in things like grain analysis where P levels are declining. So what it says to me is growers are probably utilizing P very efficiently, but the P that's being used maybe isn't performing as well, or maybe not enough's being applied, or the crop's yielding more and the demand is higher. And certainly we're starting to see these longer term trends where grain P levels are lower than what we would expect as a more normal. So the grain analysis is a great metric of saying, well, how well has P been utilized? Did I apply any P? What was my soil nutrient status? I mean, obviously, if you've got high soil nutrient status, say above index 2, legitimately there's no argument to apply any additional P, but it's still important to undertake that grain test at the end of the season to maybe identify, was something a limiting factor, particularly things like nitrogen and phosphorus in a grain test.
Yeah, so really interesting. So what you've got with that grain testing is that constant feedback as to what's going on in terms of the result on that crop. Is there any new R&D that you've been involved at Agrii in terms of looking at this area?
Yeah, it's something we do pay a lot of focus to, actually, is saying, well, look, longer term trends of P usage are declining, but we're seeing grain P levels declining too. So do we need to go back and revisit the basic principles of phosphorus application? So, your good old triple superphosphates, but also we've been working with quite a lot of technologies, anything ranging from one of our products called Release, which you apply to the soil to help free up unavailable forms of P, through to coatings of P onto fertilizer, and then also through to technologies where P can be placed on the drill in different forms as well. And that could be anything from a traditional fertilizer with a coating to help enhance the availability of the P and stop P being locked up in the soil, through to maybe microgranules, liquid P formulations, and trying to have technologies that fit with the growers' requirements, because not every grower it's not a one size fits all. Growers have different requirements in terms of what technologies they can deliver. And we continue to evaluate this in the field, but more recently we're now starting to evaluate this in our glasshouse, where we're trying to get faster results around maybe demonstrating how certain methods, certain technologies can improve root mass. And that's the important thing, because if you improve root mass, you get better exploitation of nutrients and extraction of P from the soil as well.
Oh, yeah, very interesting. I didn't realise there was so much going on, Tom. That's why you're always so busy, I'm sure. Don, from your point of view, I know you've been clocking up the miles, particularly with a view to looking at potato crops. What have you been busy with in terms of looking at your research and development there?
Okay, so yeah, from our side, I mean, it similarly mirrors the stuff that Tom is talking about. So we're kind of looking at ways to utilize releasing technologies, ways to better apply the phosphorus and apply nutrition. So particularly around potatoes and a lot of the specialty crops, they tend to be drilled either in beds and rows. So there's more of a precision element. So trying to get that phosphorus well placed and precisely close to the actual plant, so that when the crop begins to develop, it's going to be able to access phosphorus more quickly for helping root development, and then for sort of further tuber storage organ type development, and then kind of combining that more widely with the use of biostimulants, and also looking at sort of options around that kind of broader element of carbon reduction, because I think a lot of our growers are really feeling the pressure around the kind of the need to be sort of doing the right thing in terms of reducing carbon and reducing inputs, and yet they know in the crop it's critical to actually get good nutrition, and to make sure that nutrition is optimized and available at the critical times for the crop. So we're sort of placing an increased emphasis, and have been for a number of years, in looking at those aspects.
Thanks, Don. And coming back to cereals, Tom, what can a grower do to identify what the crop needs, but also in terms of identifying how that phosphorus has been used by the crop?
Well, I think it's quite an easy way to kind of maybe identify your limitations. So everybody will have a soil test. Well, they should all have a soil test anyway, which will give you your basic nutrient status for, say, phosphorus, potassium, and magnesium. But also you'd have potentially a pH result on there as well, and you can use that measurement of pH to identify whether your soils are more predominantly alkaline or predominantly more acidic. Identifying the P status of the soil, i.e., if you're in your index ranges of, say, around a 2, you're in a good place. But obviously, if you're sub an index 2, you may just be living off a basic amount of P you might apply, or that might be becoming a limiting factor. I think one of the things we've been trying to work with is maybe having technologies that fit with all different types of scenarios. So making sure we've got a product like Release, which will work across a wide variety of soil types, a wide variety of maybe soil nutrient statuses, whether that's a high P soil or low P soil, but also varying different levels of pH range as well. So So the reasons why we've been constantly evaluating release is to make sure that it fits in as many places as possible. When we initially conceived this product as something you would use on a soil type where you couldn't legitimately justify the need for P, but you had problems with phosphorus use efficiency or P uptake due to maybe it being a high pH soil. Whereas now we're starting to see growers adopt this type of technology on more normal index type soils, really.
Book your spot for the Potato Partnership event and learn about this season's trials results at your nearest location. Visit thepotatopartnership.co.uk/events. Don, how about you in those specialty crops? Let's particularly focus on potatoes. How does that grower get the levels right in terms of balancing all of the asks that are being asked of them?
I mean, I think it's actually very similar again to what Tom's described in the seal. So it's actually looking at that sort of availability index. There is work out there, and growers are thinking about ways to apply with greater precision. So again, not to apply across necessarily the whole growing area, but actually to focus, as I said earlier, around the actual plant and that sort of immediate root zone area. So you are kind of taking a precision-based approach to application. So those are kind of be the critical things that people would be thinking about. And then I think as well, you've got to look in the broader round and people will be looking at other technologies such as endophytes, maybe. So it's a bit away from the P, but that would actually broadly kind of reduce the sort of that overall carbon footprint and improve nutrient efficiency. I think we're still very much, and most people are still very much in the development days around those kind of technologies, but that's the sort of thinking that's going on farm and in discussions with growers at the moment.
But the big question that I'm sure all of those farmers listening in today will want to ask is, but how do I improve and maximise my return on the investment? And Tom, I can see you looking intently into the screen here. What are you thinking? What are you about to suggest?
No. I'm just laughing about some recent trials work we've done where we've maybe taken the kitchen sink approach and thrown, every last drop at a crop. And farmers listening at the moment will be going, well, we've had an incredibly challenging season. Where do I spend the money? And that it was interesting this season that once you cost up maybe a multitude of different concoctions, it's not about maybe the fineness of what yield it delivered. It's more around, well, what gave me the best return on investment, i.e., okay, treatment A didn't give me maybe 0.2 of a ton a hectare yield response compared to product Z or whatever, but actually from the cost of the investment in the product and the yield return, what was the best response? And it's always nice to look at these things over a multitude of seasons, because Mother Nature will give you a good testing in trials over the years. So you can't really take one year in isolation, but also when we're looking at the financial implications of the costs of growing a crop, it's where, if I'm going to spend the money, what am I going to spend it on, really, Tony?
And Tom, what happened when you threw the kitchen sink at it? What was the result?
Well, actually, it wasn't the best thing to do, because we'd stacked up a whole load of costs, and we'd not actually achieved. We tried to take all of these things. Well, if this will give you so many ton a hectare, this will give you so many ton a hectare. We stacked them all on top of each other, and then costed it out. And then actually it was more, rather than the low input, the medium input, the high input. It was actually the medium input that was more cost effective in terms of a yield response and overall profitability.
And Don, have you done any trials where you've thrown the kitchen sink at the potatoes? Talk to us about how can farmers get the best return on investment?
I was laughing at Tom's comment because that is, yes, we definitely have played that game, and it's exactly as Tom just described, which is actually it doesn't actually work out as the best thing to do. What I would say with potatoes, and in fact all root crops, is I would say what you do early is most important. With a potato, that early establishment and that period up to tuber initiation is so important in terms of establishing the potential of the crop. Obviously, you're then carrying the crop through and bulking, but actually that early period through tuber initiation is so important. So I think we've seen the greatest benefit comes from what you're putting into the seedbed. And what you're putting on kind of immediately into that soil, and that's that soil on top of the crop, really.
Very good advice, both of you. Thank you. How do growers and farmers keep in touch with the latest information that's coming out, so they can make those really good decisions on farm that are, as you said, Tom, as cost effective as possible? Tom, how can cereal growers really keep in touch with the latest information from Agrii?
Well, we obviously you've got your local Agrii contacts, i.e. agronomists and various different specialists out and about on farm. We have a good source of information on our website, and we keep our information live on the website in terms of what results we're finding and what products we've got available for these types of situations that we're talking about today. And also we tend to communicate as well across social media channels as well, what we're doing with products and bits and pieces and what we have in the market, and come to our open days, come hear what we're talking about, really.
And Don, from your point of view, I know you're very, very busy and have been with the Potato Partnership. Is that a way with which or by which growers can keep in touch with what's happening in potatoes?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, that would obviously be one of the primary ways to do that. So during the year we hold open days. So actually open events. We've had a couple. We've had one in July, and one in September. One was focused on PCN, and the other one on late blight. But we'll also have the TPP or the Potato Partnership sort of results days, which are in February. So if you take a look to the TPP website, those dates should be coming out quite soon. And there's ones across the UK.
Thank you very much indeed. And just finally, as we always do on our Tramlines podcast, in a sentence, what would be your top tip to those who are listening today to get the best return on their investment?
Oh, crikey. I suppose I've got to try and get into a sentence. Well, it probably costs about 45 quid for a grain test. And that might be a really good way of saying, I'm going to go and maybe just go and have a look and see what's there. And yeah, let's start with a grain test and see what peas in the grain, shall we?
So Tom there is talking about doing that grain test. It isn't expensive, but gives you that retrospective look back over the season. Don, what's your top tip?
Look at your soil analysis in terms of your indexes is important. Discuss that with your agronomist, and again with specialty crops. I think it's so much of it is about that early period of establishment. So what you do in the seedbed will count for what you get at the end.
Thank you, Tom and Don, for your advice and research insights regarding the justification and use of phosphorus. Do stay tuned here on Tramlines. Recent episodes live from a blackcurrant farm at harvest, digital data for the farm, and future-proofing forage against weather extremes. If you have any questions for our experts that you'd like answered, email them in to info@agrii.co.uk. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer-term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. See you next time.